Good afternoon, Professor Schmidt. What were your findings when you explored the relationship of the Common Core state standards in mathematics to students' achievement?
Well, that was the interesting part, because I think right now there's a great deal of pushback in the country. Actually not a great deal, but there is some pushback, wondering whether we're doing the right thing by moving to these Common Core standards. So it seemed a really important issue to explore. And so what I did was, since we can't really look at the effect of Common Core right now, given that it hasn't really been fully implemented, I reasoned that if we could find those standards in the past, the previous state standards, that were the closest to the Common Core, that in fact then logically, if the Common Core was going to have the potential to improve student achievement, those states which were closer to the Common Core would likely do better than those states which were further away from the Common Core previous to the adoption of the Common Core. We actually did an analysis that relates the states and how close they were to the Common Core leading up to 2009, and we found that there was a statistically significant relationship to performance on the state NAEP in 2009. Put simply, on average, the states who were the closest to the Common Core in their previous version of standards essentially did better than did the states which were further away. Now, that doesn't really prove anything, but it does suggest it's sort of a foreshadowing or an attempt to look to see the potential that the Common Core would have for improving student achievement. And I think given that the states that are the closest did better, suggests that this has a great deal of potential for improving student achievement in this country.
And why did you undertake this research?
Well, as I said a moment ago, there are people that are suggesting that Common Core standards might not make any difference because previous standards have not made much difference. But there are also those in legislatures which are saying maybe we should defund the Common Core, because how do we know this is going to work? And given that there's really no way to examine it at this point in any detailed way because it's only now being implemented, I thought that this approach would at least offer hope, give us some suggestion, give us some notion of what might be if we implement these Common Core standards. So that seemed a desirable thing to do, so we didn't get sidetracked from the central ideas that the Common Core is trying to deal with.
Did you find any similarities to international standards?
Yes, we did. We found that the Common Core standards, when compared against the standards of the top achieving countries, the original work we did in the original TIM study, we called those countries with the highest achieving 8th grade students the A+ countries. And when we look at the standards that were in place by a majority of those countries and then compared that to the new Common Core standards, we found essentially a 90% overlap between the two sets of standards. So that's another piece of evidence that's encouraging, because it says that, we now are lined up with world-class standards. For a long time, people have talked about world-class standards without much data to define what that means. Well, we have a way of defining that very empirically, and now we have found that the new Common Core standards are quite consistent with those high standards for those countries whose 8th graders achieve the best.
Given your research, do you believe CCSSM should be implemented? And if so,
I
why?
love that question, because the answer is yes. I think that we now have, by multiple standards, one, just the logic of mathematics. What we found in the original study is there were 3 characteristics of the top achieving country standards. They were focused around a key set of ideas. They didn't cover too much in each grade. They were rigorous, demanding, and they were coherent, that they were structured in a way that made logical sense from a mathematics point of view. And these new standards fit that. They are focused, coherent, and rigorous and demanding. Middle school now, for our kids, is more like the rest of the world. It's about algebra and geometry mostly, and that has not been the case. So that piece of evidence is a strong one to suggest that we're moving in the right direction, and we should implement these. The other pieces that we just talked about, the fact that states who are closer to the Common Core standards previously are basically the ones that are doing better on their NAEP performance. So I think, and then the consistency between the A+ and the Common Core standards. So there's a lot of evidence to say we're moving in the right direction. So to me, it seems to me we're at the point where we should start worrying about the serious task of implementing, because if we don't implement them, they won't succeed. Standards are only a piece of paper. in order to become reality, there has to be work put into the implementation. So I think that's what we should focus on and stop debating whether this is the right direction. By logical and empirical basis, this seems to be the right direction that we're moving.